Howdy doody, ladies and gents. It's time for part 2 of Day 9 Daily number 526, where we learn to be a better gamer. I've been having a hard time keeping track of those numbers as of late, but fortunately, we always get there eventually. In today's daily, we theoretically are admiring the wonderful play of Scarlett and Nerchio, who are about to duke it out for another 44 minutes in a Zerg vs. Zerg. We're 8 minutes and 44 seconds in, so we're doing great. Nothing too noteworthy has happened in the gameplay of part 1 because I literally could not stop laughing. Not giggling or tittering or chortling, but actually just losing control, laughing, tears welling up out of my eyes, being forced shut, sort of laughing. So we made it on to part 2. This is where we're going to get to see how these builds sort of unfold in a natural way. I almost feel like it's one of those Zen things that they talk about in Taoist philosophy, you know, about just letting the marble take the easiest path down the mountain or something like that. But I'm not quite nearly that articulate, so just go read philosophy if you're looking for that. Where's my mouse cursor? I did it. I found him. He's my favorite cursor. So let's speed this up to ×2 because I have plenty of time left in this game. And we see Scarlett taking this while doing these counterattacks. Now, I will note that Nerchio and Scarlett are jerks because they chose the colors blue and purple, which are hard to differentiate on the mini-map for me. I can't imagine how hard it would be if you were blue-purple colorblind, but Scarlett is doing a very smart play in this instance. You'll notice, quite simply, Scarlett killed off what? Only gas drones. And of course 2 of her own banelings for no reason. But remember, a Spire-based play is trying to get gases 5 and 6 up earlier, because a Spire-based play is focused on getting infestors as the follow-up. So Scarlett burns her minerals, her zerglings, to kill off the gas drones of Nerchio in order to maintain that lead. So that's a very smart tactical decision, and this is just a smart strategic decision. Going for a turd base. Likewise, Nerchio, who invested himself in a very early +1/+1, like very, very early. In fact, there's a lot of Zergs who don't even begin regular +1 attack this early. So as a result, Nerchio is doing something very weird. It is a +1/+1 timing push, but almost always when you do a very, very fast +1/+1 attack, you just don't really have that many units. You're not in a very strong position. So this, hilariously, is not a +1/+1 attack. By the way, my hard drive ran out of memory, so XSplit crashed away. My XSplit completely exploded. The daily's full of fail today. To part 2 of the Day 9 Daily, segment number 2. Wonderfully enough, I ran out of hard disk space while recording the daily. Because I have all my backup drives, but I have a solid state drive that's 128 gigabytes, and I record everything straight onto that, but I've just kind of forgot to move it down into my recordings. So in the middle of it, XSplit was like, yeah, hey, you have 3 megabytes of free space on your hard drive. So I had to move it to the recordings on my backup drive. Now, I'm sure a lot of you don't know this, but I think it's important that you do. The recording folder where I record my dailies, and of course in the backup drive, is called horse porn. Because I like the idea that maybe someone gets on my computer one day and says, I wonder if Sean has any movies on his backup drive, and looks and sees 2.5 terabytes of horse porn in this folder, and is just sort of 2.5 terabytes? That's like 4 years of footage. Oh my god. And then opens it and sees that it's me, and then gets really freaked out. Wouldn't that be funny? Opens it up, sees that it's the dailies, like, I might be reading into the folder name for Sean, but have you been on his backup drive? Have you seen it? So I had to of course move from my solid state drive horse porn folder to the archive horse porn. So So I'm back for part 2, past number 2 of Day 9 Daily number 526, where we learn to be a better gamer, semicolon, seriously we learn to be a better gamer. Let's hop right into it. So when everything crashed, I was talking about this timing push not really being particularly designed to do a lot of damage because, let's be honest, well, here is only 13 roaches, or excuse me, 11 roaches. It'll never really do that much damage. It's just a minor time buying technique, as we enable the sound. It's a minor time buying technique because Nerchio knows he has to get up an expansion, and we can already see the effect of this early ++ upgrade set. It's just defining Nerchio's setup all by itself. This sort of stuff is kind of guaranteed to do damage, but it will never really do that much. The fact that we have +1/+1 does give us that little benefit of having some sustained armor. This might look like a really awesome play. This is what I would call a bonus play. Every now and again you get the bonus of being able to do damage, but very often your opponent will just see the speed roaches very quickly and just build the Overseer and you won't really get to do much. The main goal of this is delay. As we can see, Nerchio really isn't gaining anything from this other than time. Time to get this up, time to spread the creep out, and of course time to build infestors of his own. Ah, I found it. Still not quite enough funds to comfortably build that extra hatchery by going for these early upgrades. A little bit disappointing that this +1 carapace didn't end up going down. You can see that Nerchio is super mega broke, just like 100 or under 100 minerals. But soon enough we'll end up investing in that. And again we see this seeming paradox of Nerchio actually having a little bit of an excess of gas. That's just one of the weird things that happens when you go for very early double upgrades. Yeah. Let's go ahead and speed things up a bit, shall we? Let's get to the truly crazy part. That might be the bulk of part 3. Scarlett is starting to just identify that Nerchio... Let me actually Alt-F this a bit. There we go. Scarlett is just identifying that Nerchio seems to be behind on expansion, but is really ahead on the upgrades. And a very simple logic that you can always execute. If I'm behind on upgrades, I may as well just increase the number of expansions. Or more specifically, if my units are weaker, then I'm going to need more units to win in an even fight. There's this +2 carapace upgrade. So, remember long back ago when we said, yep, this will constrict your mineral flow, it's quite hard to get a macro hatch, you'll have to rely on more of an infestor gas-based defense for much of this early stage. Rather than rushing for an early macro hatch, very often you will see players who do these early double upgrade builds as Zerg be favoring no macro hatch and an earlier 4th hatch. Scarlett is being somewhat of a badass and just going for both, and there's the macro hatch in the main base. And I think this is a very clever play from Scarlett. Essentially saying, okay, well, the original goal of early Mutalist was to get earlier gases 5 and 6. Let me go for earlier gases 7 and 8 because, hell, Nerchio, you're having a hard time keeping your expansion alive anyways. Hurl. So things finally begin to calm down. I think Scarlett has a grand total of, yeah, not many roaches, 16. But per usual, a little bit past the 150 supply mark is when many players will just throw down that Hydralisk Den. There's nothing really mind-blowing about that. This is just about the time that Zerg players generally agree upon as the money time to get themselves a Hydra Den. So alright, this is the period of what could generally be described as the sort of tragic, sort of expected period of the matchup. Everyone's getting roaches and 4 bases and infestors. The period of stagnation, +5/+5. Aw, yeah. I said +5/+5, but that's not actually a thing. I thought it would be fun to say, but now that it's out of my mouth, I realize it actually just doesn't really make any sense. Both players are really just trying to get up the hive, get all their upgrades up, trying to get into good positions. Scarlett, again, with the superior count of Mutalisks. And of course the fact that this is very secure with these extra spine crawlers, can now comfortably get herself a 5th base. But now let's start asking ourselves some normal questions. Which of these players be going for? What's the long-term plan? Most notably, we would expect both players to be heading for some sort of 3/3 Infestor Roach upgrade. And I do believe that Nerchio is especially positioned to get this +3 Infestor Roach Hydra. Cutting down on the Roaches and starting to focus more on the Hydralisks. They're both taking the desired bases. But suddenly, the ultra late game Overlord positioning becomes absolutely essential. Having an Overlord here, one right at this neck, and another Overlord here, right at this neck, or even down at this backside, this is critical because this bottom expansion and this top expansion are the huge important points of interest for both players. This is the phase in the game that I think is under-considered in the Zerg vs. Zerg matchup. Nerchio is most often going to want to secure this expansion because this position is very easy to hold for Nerchio. Just fungal growths here. And likewise, you can see that if Nerchio went for this base, it's much harder to hold because there's an attack angle here and an attack angle not just from the top right side, but also it's quite a far distance up to here. So you have to have units positioned here and units positioned quite far away down there. So Nerchio wants this base and should focus here. Scarlett wants this base and should focus here. And both players should be trying to prevent both, or the other one, from doing too much expanding in that location. So the fact that Scarlett rushes up to meet Nerchio, on one hand, certainly is because it will end in a better engagement. But on the other hand, it is also because denying Nerchio from this northern expansion is so important. If Nerchio gets good control over this northern one, Scarlett's effectively screwed. So we see some happy time exchange battles. The period of stagnation resumes. I think it's really cool that players are more so favoring the very early +3/+1 instead of going for the very early hive. If you're starting to pack up on a lot of Hydralisk Infestor, I think that that is an ideal time to round out that composition with Roach, or excuse me, with the Greater Spire type units. And similarly, I like the fact that if you are going for a mid-game Infestor Roach army, you round it out with Hydras. So Broodlords are just sort of the next phase in this evolution. And Scarlett is trying to force down to attack this expansion, but I think that this can oftentimes just be a really difficult exercise to do. Very rarely will the concave favor you. The reinforcement path for Scarlett does an anti-concave, it does a convex, and Nerchio's reinforcement path does an automatic concave. Just coming up from this angle and sort of spreading out there. Speeding things up for a little bit of time. So after all these exchanges take place, most players will end up making a pretty sharp transition after they get this extra 5th base worth of gas. Many times the Zerg players will say, okay, well if I'm going to be at 4 gas, I would rather devote as much gas as possible to Infestors and as little as possible to not Infestors. Weirdly, the Broodlord takes so much gas away from everything else that it can be a huge impediment if you start to get the Broodlords too early. So I really like how often players are doing this. We even saw Idra do that versus Roro in Sunday's Daily, where we saw Idra go for +3 air attack, or excuse me, +3 range attack and +3 carapace before even starting the Greater Spire. It's really, really important that you are dominating on that ground front. Otherwise, these expansions are a little too difficult to hold. But Nerchio, he gets it. Scarlett, she gets it. Killing off all them needless units. And weirdly, at this very late game stage, we start to see some unusual divergence pop up right around the corner. Now, I might be one of the worst daily doers of all time. Because this part 2 let's see, should be wrapping up in about 5 minutes or so, and we're 2 minutes through a 50-minute game. But you know what? We shall persevere. Oh yeah! Let's get to it. So at this point in time, the quasi-stalemate occurs. If I were in Nerchio's shoes, sure, you can break through this, and it's an effective angle of attack. It's open up enough that Scarlett only really gains an advantage when the purple Zerg units are to the east of this Xel'Naga tower. So in Nerchio's shoes, just starting to position Broodlords here-ish and taking this expansion is really, really quite ideal. Until the Corruptor count gets too high for Scarlett, just positioning them somewhere where they can reinforce both this angle and this angle are great. Especially because we're high on Hydralisks in this Nerchio army. It's difficult to retreat, so we don't really want to make an attack unless we can be guaranteed to commit to it. Scarlett's doing whatever with these Mutalisks. They're not going to be huge game changers at this point in time in major battles, so using them for harassment works. A-okay nifty damage. And this is the kind of battle that I think really highlights the danger of going for Broodlords a little too quickly, and even trying to attack through this angle a little too quickly. Scarlett is behind on upgrades, 3-1 versus the 2-2. Infested Terrans frickin' rock against Broodlords in small numbers. Like frickin' rock. In large numbers, the Infested Terrans glitch super hard and don't really fire properly. But now by getting those Broodlords out, they just can't really deal damage quickly enough, and Scarlett is going to be able to easily overrun this. This food up here can be deceptive, because, in fact, 36 supply is right there in Hydras, and 28 supply is there. Yeah, in fact, about 50 supply is just in these layer tech units, not to mention a single extra Broodlord. So, if there is to be some sort of push done, I'm actually not the biggest fan of a Hydra-heavy push through a middle. Hydra-heavy defense down to this base, I do like. And of course, pushing with spine crawlers is always going to be kick-ass. Frickin' always, man. Broodlords continue to move forward. Broodlords in small numbers are generally going to struggle quite a lot against pure Roach Hydra Infester. Nerchio's just chilling back to defend. Spine crawlers are going to be really nice, and it's just a little bit too hard of a position. So I like that Scarlett sort of teased forward and said, well, this might not be an ideal push angle. This might not be the ideal push composition, but I killed off a lot of units just there. So let me take a gander. Nope, didn't pan out, so of course we have these counter swings starting to become significant over time. Also, I want to note that these counter swings get shut down if you do expand to your oh-so-desired location. Now this is a good brief pausing point, just to note that almost everyone, when they're playing StarCraft and they get to a level of reasonable competency, every single person has that money mix that they're going for. The money mix. Protosses, you know what the money mix is versus Zerg. That Stalker Immortal Sentry Colossus Ball versus Zerg. Zerg, I don't care what matchup you're playing. It's Infester Broodlord. I know you thought it. It's that sort of thing that it's very easy to know, okay, I'm going to open with Ling Baneling, and then go Roach Infester, and then throw in the Hydralisk, and then I'll begin getting Broodlords, and then I'm going to go in only Infester Broodlord, and yeah! And, I mean, no matter how complicated this partitioning is up of this composition, at the very end, this statement, I will be going Broodlord Infester, that is the end. It's an end to the sequence. And it's so easy to hit that point where you start doing the end, and you don't think about any next step. There's additional transitions beyond just Broodlord Infester, incorporating things like drops, significant impact in late-turn play, especially if Nerchio's up here trying to defend this top base. All the focus is on there. Why? Well, Natural's mined out, Main's mined out, Third would be mined out if Nerchio is really entrenched here. And 8 lings dropping right here can do huge damage. Odd transitions that you would ordinarily forget about become quite significant. So I'm excited about the fact that Scarlett is upgrading these Zergling upgrades, the Carapace and the +1. We see Nerchio just chilling on the basic ranged upgradey type stuff. And hilariously enough, we are now going to go to a break, because when we come back, it's going to be part 3 to this wonderful little daily, where we're admiring the play of these two players, and I will gladly note that we are halfway done with this Zerg versus Zerg. What do you do in the post-late game situation? What do you do when Broodlords and Infestors are both available, and suddenly we're finding out that we don't actually have a really clear edge? We're now going to be battling for 6th bases. We're going to go find it out after the break. Don't throw pens at your monitors. It's not good for them. Yes.